He was the king of Wall Street, a financial genius, a trusted name whispered in elite circles. From Hollywood stars to Holocaust survivors, everyone believed in him. But behind the curtain of success and wealth, he was orchestrating the biggest lie in financial history. This isn't a story about money. It's a story about how far one man went, and how blind the world was while he did it. This is the true story of Bernie Madoff, the man who fooled the world. The illusion begins. He was the man the world trusted most, until one winter evening shattered it all. In the heart of Manhattan's financial district stood a man whose name didn't just open doors, it commanded reverence. Bernard Lawrence Madoff, or Bernie Madoff, was no ordinary Wall Street figure. In 1960, with just $5,000, he founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities. To most, this was the American dream come true, a self-made man rising through hard work and genius. But beneath the polished suits and charming smile lay the architect of one of the greatest financial deceptions in history. Madoff had an air of quiet power. He didn't chase investors, they chased him. His fund became known not just for consistent returns, but for exclusivity. If you were lucky enough to get in, you didn't question how, you just thanked the stars you did. Everyone wanted a piece of Bernie's magic. And magic it seemed to be. Year after year, investors received steady returns, 10 to 12%, rain or shine, crash or boom. It didn't matter what the markets did. Madoff's results were always smooth, always predictable. For those burned by market volatility, he was a savior. But behind the curtain, things were strange. There was a floor, the 17th floor of the Lipstick Building, that operated in near secrecy. Only a few employees had access. What they did there, no one really knew. But every month, like clockwork, statements went out showing profits, growth, success. Investors never saw trades, never spoke to analysts, just numbers on paper, growing like magic. Celebrities, foundations, universities, and even everyday retirees gave their savings to Madoff. Names like Kevin Bacon and Steven Spielberg had investments with him. Entire charities built their futures on the promise of his consistency. Bernie wasn't just a fund manager, he was a financial messiah. And yet, no one ever truly understood how he did it. If anyone asked, the answer was vague: it's a proprietary strategy, split-strike conversion. Few even knew what that meant. But when the results came in, no one complained. Why look too closely at a gift that keeps on giving? What no one realized, or wanted to realize, was that this miracle was too perfect, too controlled, too untouched by chaos. Behind that illusion of brilliance was a silence so carefully constructed that even regulatory bodies failed to detect the storm brewing underneath. This was not a story of greed alone. It was a story of trust, blind, absolute trust. And it was about to be broken in the most catastrophic way. Web of lies. He didn't invest your money. He just moved it around. From one hand to another. At the core of Bernie Madoff's empire was not innovation, nor some secret Wall Street formula. It was something much older, much simpler, the classic Ponzi scheme. He never actually invested the money. When a new client handed over their savings, Madoff didn't buy stocks or trade on their behalf. Instead, he used that fresh money to pay returns to earlier investors. To them, it looked like profit. In reality, it was someone else's deposit. The illusion worked because of trust. Investors saw the results, printed reports showing detailed trades, positive growth, and a clear upward path. But these documents were fabricated. Madoff's small team on the 17th floor used outdated computers and custom software to produce completely fake statements. Fake trades, fake gains, fake everything. Employees worked in silos. Many didn't know the full picture. A few suspected something was off, that there was no evidence of real trading. But Madoff's charisma and the firm's prestigious image kept questions at bay. People assumed, if the SEC isn't concerned, why should I be? Ironically, the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, did investigate Madoff multiple times. Whistleblowers, like financial analyst Harry Markopolos, submitted detailed reports warning that Madoff's performance was mathematically impossible. But time and time again, the investigations came up empty. Madoff was a respected figure. He had even served as chairman of NASDAQ. That reputation acted as armor. Regulators hesitated. Investors stayed loyal. Even banks and financial advisors recommended him to their wealthiest clients. All the while, the scheme grew. At its height, Madoff managed over $65 billion on paper. The reality? Only a fraction of that money ever truly existed. The rest was numbers on fake statements. And Madoff knew it couldn't last forever. He once told a colleague, in a rare moment of honesty, "The whole thing will blow up someday. But not today." It was a castle built on sand, and the tide was coming. Behind the smiles and the well-fitted suits was a man orchestrating a performance, playing God with people's lives and livelihoods. He wasn't stealing from the rich to give to the poor. He was stealing from everyone, from retirees, from charities, from schools, and smiling while he did it. The deception ran so deep, so wide, and so cleverly masked that even some of his own family didn't know what he was truly doing. But in 2008, when the financial world began to fall apart, the cracks in Madoff's empire widened, and the truth would no longer stay hidden. The fall. It wasn't the law that caught him. It was math. By late 2008, the world was collapsing into a financial crisis. Banks were failing. Markets were crashing. Fear was everywhere. And suddenly, Madoff's clients, the same ones who once begged him to take their money, began demanding it back. One by one, phone calls flooded in. "We need to withdraw our funds. We want out now. Can you send our money by next week?" But Madoff didn't have it. The returns had never been real, and now there wasn't enough new money coming in to cover the redemptions. For the first time in decades, he couldn't keep the machine running. On December 10, 2008, Bernie Madoff sat down with his two sons, Mark and Andrew. He looked them in the eyes and said 7 words that would echo through history. "It's all one big lie." His sons were stunned. They had worked in the business but on the legitimate side, and now their father was telling them the entire empire was a fraud. Madoff confessed everything. No real investments. No profits. Just lies, stacked on lies, over decades. They didn't hesitate. That same night, they contacted the authorities. On December 11, 2008, Bernie Madoff was arrested at his Manhattan penthouse. The illusion had officially collapsed. The media exploded. How did no one know? Where was the SEC? Who else was involved? Victims emerged by the thousands. Some had lost their entire life savings. Others had to return millions in false profits. Celebrities were humiliated. Charities shut their doors. Retirees went back to work. A Holocaust survivor who had invested everything with Madoff was forced to sell his home. A non-profit for children with cancer had to cease operations overnight. It wasn't just money that was stolen, it was hope, security, and in many cases, dignity. Bernie, meanwhile, appeared eerily calm. In court, he pled guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He showed little remorse, as if the burden of keeping the secret had been heavier than the crime itself. On June 29, 2009, the judge sentenced him to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible. He stood silent. There were no tears, no excuses, just a quiet man in a suit, who had once fooled the world, now being led away in handcuffs. And yet, in the silence that followed, the real question began to emerge. How many others knew, and said nothing? Aftermath and legacy. He stole more than money. He stole time, dreams, and trust. Bernie Madoff died in prison in 2021 at the age of 82. He lived his final years behind bars, confined to a cell, a far cry from his luxurious Manhattan lifestyle. But long after his death, the wreckage of his crimes still lingered. His family was shattered. His eldest son, Mark Madoff, took his own life exactly 2 years after Bernie's arrest. His younger son, Andrew, died of cancer in 2014. Both claimed they never knew what their father was doing, and neither ever recovered from the public shame. His wife, Ruth Madoff, withdrew from the public eye. She said she felt as if Bernie had died the day he confessed. She gave up nearly all her assets but was never charged. She lived alone, away from the spotlight, grieving not just the collapse of her family, but of everything she believed to be true. Yet, amid the ashes, there were some efforts at recovery. Irving Picard, a court-appointed trustee, began an exhaustive process to claw back funds from those who had received fictitious profits. Through legal settlements, negotiations, and asset seizures, Picard managed to recover over $14 billion, an unprecedented achievement in financial fraud history. Many victims got a portion of their money back. Some were made nearly whole. But for countless others, no amount of money could restore what was lost. The scandal also forced America to take a hard look at its financial oversight. The SEC was humiliated. Reports showed that red flags had been missed, repeatedly. Whistleblowers like Harry Markopolos, who had been warning the government for years, were finally vindicated. The lesson: reputation isn't regulation. Charm isn't honesty. And too good to be true usually is. In the years following, financial firms faced stricter rules, tighter audits, and increased scrutiny. But Madoff's shadow remained. He became a symbol, not just of greed, but of the blind trust that allowed deception to flourish. His face appeared in documentaries, books, podcasts. Victims shared their stories. And the world slowly began to understand the full scale of what he had done. Bernie didn't sell investments. He sold certainty in an uncertain world. And that certainty came at a terrible price. In the end, Madoff's empire wasn't built with stocks or bonds. It was built with trust. Trust he manipulated. Trust he betrayed. Trust that took decades to build and only moments to destroy. And when the illusion finally broke, so did the lives of thousands. Bernie Madoff died in prison, but the scars he left remain etched in thousands of lives. He didn't just steal billions. He stole trust, time, and futures. His name became a cautionary tale, not just in finance, but in faith. And perhaps the most terrifying truth of all? He didn't need to sneak in. We let him in because we wanted to believe. And sometimes, belief is the most dangerous thing of all.